loneliness and isolation. I've been looking at the report from the US Surgeon General on the epidemic of loneliness, and it goes through a lot of different criteria, a lot of different factors, risk factors, how loneliness increases your likeliness for death. Okay, among other things. I've been doing a little series on the epidemic of loneliness and isolation, and so it's time to wrap it up. I have my own recommendations. We'll see what they're recommending. I'd just like to start off with a video that I made a few months ago, and it's received over 1 million views. And by the way, there's a 4-day lone wolf gathering. Check the link below for how to access and register. 4 reasons that I cited in this video are: 1, at some point in your life, you were abandoned and left alone. So it feels like your natural state. And what I want to highlight here is your natural state, because it's not natural for humans to be isolating and spending time alone. What is natural is for us to be connecting with other people. But over the course of human existence, we have been accumulating a lot of generational trauma that has mostly been left unhealed and unresolved, and even unattended to, and most of which that we're completely unaware of. And so it makes me wonder if we are gravitating towards a more natural state of solitude and isolation as we reach this period of time in our human evolution to heal from our generational trauma. And the whole being abandoned, the whole being left alone is also the era where a lot of us grew up, where our mothers were not staying at home with us. Women were no longer staying in the home. Women's liberation occurred, and women were going out and working, leaving their children with daycare providers, or who knows what other kind of precarious childcare. And this may have left us with a sense of abandonment, depending on how attached we were to our parents in those early years. But these times are different. These times, people aren't having children as much as they used to. These times, people are growing up, entering adulthood, maybe getting married, maybe not. The decline of marriage has been occurring. The decline of people having children has been taking place. It's no longer a societal expectation as much as it used to be to get married and have kids. And there's a few reasons for that. Number 1 being the financial climate that we're living in, that it's kind of unaffordable to raise a family. And 2, the fact that a lot of us don't want to have children because we don't want to bring them in to the generation of trauma that we came from. The second reason I talk about in the 4 reasons why you're isolating is that you feel misunderstood most of the time. So isolating yourself from people is protecting you from judgment and criticism. Feeling misunderstood, 1, because I want to spend so much time alone. Feeling misunderstood because I have different views from other people that I was raised with. Feeling misunderstood because I'm somebody who's neurodivergent and doesn't think the way other people do and doesn't act the way other people do and is made to conform to a neurotypical world, which is very difficult and next to impossible. And so the isolating is protecting from judgment and criticism. Why aren't you like everyone else? Why aren't you getting out more? Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? You know, this isn't normal. Something must be wrong with you. Are you okay? Are you depressed? And the third one is that you're burnt out and experiencing high levels of stress. So to be around other people right now takes up a lot of your energy that you've been trying to restore. Burnt out, experiencing high levels of stress. Why? You do something called masking. You put on a face, you put on an act, you perform for the world and be who they want you to be. And that's exhausting to be that way all the time. And the crazy thing is that you probably don't even know that you've been masking. You probably don't even know what that word is. But you've been covering up a real, true aspect of yourself that you don't want other people to see because other people won't understand it. So you got to conform, you got to be normal, you got to do what everyone else is doing. But it's taking up all your energy. And so this is the factor of needing to spend a lot of time alone to have the energy just to do your normal everyday things. And that time that you require appears excessive compared to what other people's time alone looks like. And that's what people don't understand. That's why people think you're depressed. They don't see it as you practicing self-care. They don't see it as you being authentic to your own needs. And then the last factor is because you don't have a support system of people to rely on. So you're healing with your army of one. Now, why don't you have a support system? Probably because you were born into this family of generational trauma that never fixed themselves, never healed themselves, never tended to the things that they needed to heal in themselves. And it's left a mark on you as you're trying to heal and you're trying to change, but other people around you aren't doing the same thing and they don't understand and they don't want to take responsibility for their shit. So you have to distance yourself from them. You have to distance yourself from those people who don't want to change so that you can have a healthier relationship with the people in your life. You're left with no other choice. And this healing with an army of one was really powerful for people to hear. They're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm doing. It is just me, and I am everything to myself. And it's hard and it sucks. But at the same time, people have this very peaceful feeling about it. Like I said, this is a big video. It went into like 1.3 million views. And somebody who's pretty famous, who has 1 million followers, and somebody who I adore and listen to her music a lot growing up. Okay. Every album, I know every song on that album, can sing every song, I know all the lyrics, got me through a lot of hard times in my life. India Irie, legend. She commented on the video and she said all of them at once. And you know, it's great that she commented on this video because it shows that it's not just normal people like you and me who are experiencing this stuff. It is people who you see having a lovely, lavish life, who are successful, who have millions of followers on Instagram, who have sold millions of records and earned a lot of Grammys and best-selling this and best-selling that, and still feel this way. And we need to bring attention to those people out there who are the creative artists, you know, the musical people, those thinking outside the box people, those people who are expressive in their talents, who are here to help uplift the positive energy of the world through their music, through their art. But meanwhile, they're experiencing this solitude, this isolation, and this loneliness as well. They're also feeling misunderstood. They're also healing with their army of one. They've also had to cut off toxic people. They're also burnt out from having to put on a fake mask for people to be who other people want them to be. And I know with India Irie, she recently took this big turn and she started to speak up about religion and about what's happening in the world. And, you know, she didn't get as many views or as many, you know, downloads and listens of these songs that she was making. But this isn't what we're here for. We're not here for the likes and follows. We're here just to make a difference. And if you make a difference in one person's life, amazing. If you've just made a difference in your own life, amazing. So there's someone like India Irie, and I'm sure there's a lot of other artists, talented, you know, a lot of other artists and creative people, whether they're well-known or they're grassroots and you've never heard of them. They're also going through this exact same thing. And this is very common in the artistic and creative community. Because to be so artistic and creative requires a lot of time alone, a lot of solitude, a lot of time to reflect with yourself without anyone else around. Because as soon as other people come along, now you're influenced by other people's attitudes and mentalities and beliefs and values that might not be in alignment with yours. And as somebody who's very sensitive to other people, you might take that on. You might assimilate that and become something that you're not. You might start to believe in something that's not in alignment with your truth. So in order to stay true to yourself, it does require staying in your own lane, and sometimes for a long time, where you do cut other people off while you're working on some really important stuff. Now, some of the highlights of the comments that I received: someone saying, thank you for this. I walked away from my toxic family years ago, right? So this is why you're healing with your army of one, because you had to walk away from some people. She says that it was the healthiest boundary she ever placed in her life. Then she stopped drinking. So you can imagine what happened then. She says, I didn't realize that a lot of transactional friends disappeared when the partying diminished. Now it's just me, sobriety, and my dog. I'm 50 and always enjoyed my own company. I am grateful to be alive and for the couple of friends who weathered the storm with me. She's not completely alone. She's got a few friends. She's got her dog, and she's grateful. And she's always enjoyed her own company. There's a big difference between the people who are lonely and isolated and miserable and unhealthy about it. And then there's a group of people who are alone, living in solitude happily. And I think it really comes down to the mindset. Are you coming to it with bitterness and resentment, or are you embracing it and seeing the gratitude? Another comment that came through was, I hope people, most specifically family members or relatives, would understand this coping mechanism. I'm literally like this, and instead of people trying to understand it as they making up something that fits with their perception, it really hurts being misinterpreted, given I also have my internal struggles. To this comment, I responded to saying, like, yeah, we do have a need to be understood, but what's more is knowing what we can and what we cannot control. And so long as we accept and understand ourselves, which is in our control, that's what matters most. You hope other people might see this and then gain an understanding, but they might never understand. You can express it to them in the most perfect way, and they'll never understand because they're just in their judging mind. They're in their own box of perceptions. Exactly where you are right now always needs to be where you're okay to live for all of eternity. Because you can always be going around looking for that person, looking for that thing. That's it. That's what I need. That's the relationship. That's the thing that's going to make me feel better. Nothing's going to make you feel better until you accept who you are in this moment right now. Right now. With all your flaws, with all your debts, with all your health concerns, with everything that you have, that you're dragging behind you. Accept it all. And once you accept it all, then there's like this change of energy that comes all of a sudden that says, okay, I can live here in peace and still have all that junk behind me. But do I want to keep carrying it? Or am I going to start to move forward in more of a transformative way? What am I going to start doing? What am I going to start shifting that's going to transform that stuff that I'm carrying with me into something lighter, into something more useful, into something that allows me to see the world in a way that I've never seen it before? So I found this article called People with Complex Trauma Create What They Hate. They hate being lonely, yet they find themselves to be lonely. They hate being betrayed and hate people who betray them. So they won't connect with people so they can avoid being betrayed. Or they will connect and be overly clingy and anxious about it, causing people to withdraw from them, and then proving the belief that people can't be trusted and will just leave them and betray them anyway, perpetuating their loneliness. So the way to overcome that is by changing their beliefs and challenging their lies. Having more and more opportunities to prove our lies wrong over time allows our belief systems to change toward being more open instead of being closed, to being more interested in others instead of the rigidity that we have towards them. And once our mind is open to learning and connecting, the neural pathways are firing differently, much different from a brain that is firing in a way to control and protect itself from harm all the time. So we have to look at the difference between a learning brain and a surviving brain. This is the difference between somebody who's going to see isolating and loneliness as a bad thing and be resentful for it and wonder why no one's coming to save me and why no one understands, versus somebody who can embrace it, see the value, and work with it, which is the learning brain. A learning brain is one that's able to take new information. It also means that you're able to perform daily tasks. The learning brain is the idea of something new might be exciting for you. You feel open to new ideas. It's capable, it's eager for learning. We also might hear this as a growth mindset or an abundance mindset versus somebody who's in a survival brain or a victim brain or a scarcity or fixed mindset. It's what happens when you feel mentally and emotionally overwhelmed. You're unable to process new ideas. You can't take all that luggage you've been carrying from behind you and see it in a different way. You don't know how to lighten that load. You feel like all that stuff is necessary to come forth with you. But being in a state of survival brain doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means your brain is so occupied with making sure you can get through life day to day that you can't take on anything more new at the moment. It's focused on keeping you alive. You feel like everything is just hard and difficult, but it might actually be to your detriment and increase your mortality rate. Sharing some more comments from this video. I think in my case, it's no longer a healing story. Looks rather like an undirectional path towards settling as a hermit. That got 181 likes on that comment. Again, it's all about the way you're viewing yourself. You know, it could be undirectional path. That could be amazing. Do you like to have direction in life? Or are you okay to just go out on a whim and follow the unknown? We can do that too. But we're not taught to. We're not conditioned to live undirectionally. You need to have a direction. You need to know where you're going. But even that can be loosely built. Even that can be spontaneous and flexible. Like, so long as I'm going towards some sense of inner peace and inner acceptance and self-acceptance, isn't that directional enough? So it doesn't matter where I go or where life takes me, so long as I am in this accepting state, then I am free. Freedom. And the freedom being a hermit. There's this YouTube channel about this guy who builds his own log cabin up in Alaska, and he lives there for, I think, like 30 years. You would probably call this guy a hermit. But he lived in so much peace and tranquility. People now visit this area as a landmark, as he's passed away, I think, earlier in the 2000s. So yeah, his name is Dick Pronicki. And he retired when he was 50 back in 1967. And then he decided to build his own cabin on the shore of Twin Lakes. And he lived there for 30 years. Yeah. You know? So maybe a lot of you are reaching that midlife, right? Where you're like, what do I want my life to look like? And I don't know what this guy retired from. I don't know what he was. Like, what was this guy? Another guy, Christopher McCandless. He died from starvation and possibly poisoning when he was 24, camping alone on a remote trail in Alaska. Yeah, 24. 24 versus Dick Pronicki, who was 50. He knew what he was doing. He sure did. Richard Pronicki. This Pronicki guy, he left high school after 2 years because he didn't like it. And then, so he worked driving tractors and he worked with farm equipment and he did typical chores that an Iowa family farm requires at the time. He also admired motorcycles and got a Harley when he was a teenager. So he was discharged from the Navy and then he went to become a diesel mechanic and he had this love of nature. And so he moved to Oregon to work at a sheep ranch. And then he moved to Alaska in 1950. He worked as a heavy equipment operator, a repairman at the Naval Air Station. He was a salmon fisherman, a diesel technician. He worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service. His skills as a technician, apparently, he was very well known for that and sought after for that. And then he saved up for retirement and then got this Twin Lakes cabin. Yeah. True lone wolf there, I say. Wow. And so he made friends with the birds and the animals, and he would, have logs and journals about everything that was going on all the time, writing about the weather and all of the things that he was doing. Someone else says, I've been isolating for 6 months. Lowest point of my life. Reading through all these comments, seeing how many people resonate with this is just heartbreaking. I wish we could all get together and have a party. Never knew life could get so damn difficult and lonely. So there's another perspective, right? Is it so heartbreaking for that person? It's really heartbreaking. They've only been experiencing this for the last 6 months, whereas some of us have been experiencing this isolation to a certain degree, and this loneliness to a certain degree for our whole lives. And so do we see it as this heartbreaking experience, or do we see it as something that has been allowing our consciousness to expand and it's been allowing our creativity to expand and our artistry of our very special interests and talents that we have to expand? Someone else talks about how they have felt abandonment in most of their years. Notice they've isolated themselves from life in general, but you wouldn't know it to look at me. I can hide it well. I have basically died inside, but still go on. I reach out and ask for a cheerleader to help me, but still no one gets it. I have lost the will to be me, but I haven't thrown in the towel. I'm still here. Amazing. You're still here. You're going to be your own cheerleader. Sometimes we have to be. But sometimes it takes someone else coming out to say, look, I'm my own cheerleader and you can be too. Asking for something means you don't have it already in yourself. If I'm asking the universe to send me love, it means I don't already have love in myself. I already have that in me. This is part of our spiritual journey. And a lot of this isolation and loneliness is so prevalent on the spiritual journey. As you're going through these dark nights of the soul and through depression, all this, you're going to have these moments of wondering like, oh, what am I doing here? What's the point of all this? I'm just going to throw the towel in. No one cares. No one's coming. If I died, no one would notice. So it is very sad. It is very heartbreaking when we hear those kind of opinions, and they exist and they're out there. And maybe you are somebody who's watching this video right now who feels exactly the same. This lady goes on to say that she's 62. She's an empty nester and she's divorced and she's on disability and she's losing her strength. Now, this is a perfect example of the people that they're referring to in this loneliness report. They have very few supports. They are disabled in one way or another. They cannot work, right? Probably their accessibility to services is limited. Her kids have left home. She no longer has a partner. She's in her 60s, to the point in our lives where if we don't understand where our purpose is, it makes it even more difficult because we're carrying around, remember all that stuff in the back? We're carrying all that stuff around, seeing it as something that's weighing us down instead of understanding how to accept it so that we can lighten our load and move forward. But she says, I will not give up though, but I will get mad at me for not being able to do the things I used to do. I am my own worst enemy. And I really need a cheerleader to spring back to life. I try and fail, but I still reach out. Okay. So she's still like looking for something outside of herself to be that cheerleader. to help her forward. And maybe if that woman is listening right now, I hope she's going to come to the Lone Wolf Anti-Convention that I'm offering for free, June 20th to the 23rd. Check the link for how to register. Because sometimes just hearing about other people talk about it is the little lift that you need to say, oh, that person is in the exact same position as me, and they have made the most of this. They have come to accept it. Holy crap, that's possible? I can do that? Yes, you can do that. I mean, I'm only here at age 47, soon to be 48. Who knows how I'll be feeling when I'm 62? I'm not sure. But I feel like if I continue to take this positive attitude that I have forward, then that's really going to be greatly beneficial for me. And I don't have any health issues, to be honest with you. I'm in excellent health. But let's say that changed and my health was compromised, then I'm sure having this positive outlook will benefit me because it will definitely be challenged. Another comment that got a lot of likes was, solitude has brought me peace and clarity. I've learned so much about myself. Yeah. Some of us are just naturally very introspective. Like we're very interested in understanding ourselves and our nuances and our personalities and understanding the world around us, being highly observant to people and places and things. Whereas other people have no interest in that. Other people are not so deeply introspective. They're not. And I think for those people, if they found themselves in this isolated, lonely state, it would really be devastating for them because all that you're left with is yourself. And to be forced to take a look at yourself, some people might be very uncomfortable with that. And let's face it, that's why alcohol and drugs and smoking, you know, all these stimulants and uppers and downers to change our inner world play a role in a lot of people's lives. Addiction is a huge factor in all of this. And then probably the comment that got the most likes, of over 600 likes on this one, was, but I'm not lonely. I'm happy like that. Is this okay? So you've got the people who are just like gravely against it. Like, this sucks. I can't do it. You know, somebody come and save me. Bring me a cheerleader. I'm about to give up, but I haven't yet. Then there's the people who are saying, this is the greatest. It allows me so much introspection and peace. And I've been this way my whole life. And then the other people saying, this is me. I really am happy like this, though. Is that all right? Is there something wrong with me? There's like, I'm not sure. Should I be really depressed about it? Or am I allowed to be happy about it? You're only going to be able to be accepting of something if you know that it's okay to accept it. And so someone comes along to give you permission to accept that way of life. Yeah, it's okay. There's others of us like you out there, and we're happy with it too. So it's all right, you can. Some people thought that talking about isolating would make it worse. No, making videos like this and talking about it normalizes it so that people aren't going to be over there feeling ashamed about themselves. And that is probably what's attributing to the health risks that are involved with somebody who is isolated and lonely. Because if you are sitting there ashamed about it and misunderstood about it, that is going to impact your physical health. Something is wrong with you. And your cells respond in such a manner that say something is wrong with us. She thinks something is wrong with us. We're not okay. And then our physical body starts to decline. We have autoimmune disorders. We have chronic pain disorders. Whatever else, we develop cancer. We engage in addictions because we feel like something is wrong with us. So we self-medicate. And so when the government agencies are saying to people who are isolating and lonely that we have this epidemic because it's causing premature death amongst people, there's health risks that are associated with you isolating yourself. And to a certain degree, yes, because maybe you're out in the middle of nowhere where if you die, there's no one around to know. Well, yeah, that's one thing. But more so is they're just linking, even if you did have connections with other people, but you felt internally lonely, that's going to impact your health. Yeah, because it's a mental health issue. Now we're incorporating mental health, indeed, will cause you to live a shorter lifespan if you struggle with mental health for your whole life. Yeah, that's nothing new. But the government likes to give us these scare tactics, these fear-based responses that tells you that your isolation is going to reduce the years that you're living on this earth. Also, who cares? Okay? We don't all need to be living to be 110 years old around here. If I died at 75, that would be fine. Just make sure you're living a life that you enjoy. And if you're happy living a life by yourself, then by all means, carry on. Some people are just living their lives and are happy and healthy like this. Some studies might say that being alone increases your mortality rate, while no studies are done to say that being alone is recommended for certain groups. Certain groups are better off not to spend so much time in social settings, because if you are neurologically designed, your personality or how your mood is based is actually ideal for you. We can create social outlets for people with technology that people can access from their own homes. We definitely need some walkable cities and communities. And don't dismiss what might actually be working for people. Look at what is not working, is judgment and attachments to old, outdated beliefs. In its 2020 consensus study report, it said over 4 decades of research has produced robust evidence that lacking social connection, and in particular, scoring high on measures of social isolation, is associated with a significantly increased risk for early death from all causes. What is underneath that? Lacking social connection, and I'm feeling misunderstood, and I'm feeling unsupported, and I'm feeling resentment towards my lack of social connection. And I'm spending a lot of time alone because I hate people and people suck. Okay? That's just a whole mentality. Because meanwhile, we have these other people who don't have a lot of social connection and who are isolating themselves, but it's actually, transformed into a state of solitude. Are those people at risk for early death too, from all causes? People who have social deficits, and they characterize the social deficit as being isolated and lonely and not having good quality relationships, we're going to die earlier. So here's a little chart. Lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Wow. So you're better off to go, hang out with people in the smoking area and have a cigarette. Connect over a smoke. You'll live longer than the people who are not smoking together. It's almost better to take up smoking and drinking so you can go sit at a bar or go out for a smoke and have social interactions. But okay, in all seriousness here, data across 148 studies with an average of a 7.5-year follow-up suggested that social connection increases the odds of survival by 50%. So, you could have a health problem. You could go into the hospital, you get a little social connection, have some nice nurses and staff, you get healed, you feel better, you go home. But do you go back to your depressed, lonely, isolated state? Or do you have a shift in your consciousness and your gratitude towards life and for being here? And you accept this path that you're on? You really could. And like I said, living in a walkable community, you could go out there for a walk, go to your local little shops, do your little things, go to the library. You don't have to interact with other people necessarily, but just being around them, come back to your home. Evidence also suggests that people who are less socially connected, particularly those living alone, may be less likely to make it to the hospital, increasing the risk of dying from a cardiac event. Yes, that's very true. And that's where I hear people say, if I died, no one would notice. That's the epidemic of loneliness right there. Heart attack is less likely to be fatal for people living with others or who have more social contacts, perhaps because of the immediate response and availability of help during the event. Several studies demonstrate that the more social support one has, the greater the reduction in the possibility of developing high blood pressure, even in populations who are at higher risk of the condition, such as Black Americans. And may I ask why Black Americans, not just Americans, those who were descendants of slavery, have a higher risk of high blood pressure? This must be a genetic condition rooted in generational DNA as a result of increased cortisol, adrenaline levels that come from experiencing stress and trauma over a long period of time. Okay, don't forget how that group experienced something called segregation. isolation, loneliness, shame on purpose. But for Black Americans who are receiving greater social support, they experience a 36% lower risk of high blood pressure in the long term. So how do we get people in the mindset to connect? And then to continue doing so over a long period of time consistently. It's like people are going to be subject to those cycles of relapse. And this is exactly what we do. We go and connect, and then guess what happens afterwards? You don't connect again for months later or weeks later. And a large part of that needs to be normalized. It's okay. It's like just identifying how much social connection is actually necessary for someone. Because I think we put like these expectations way up there that we can't reach and we're never going to reach. Something's wrong with me. I'm not connecting enough as I'm supposed to by these health guidelines. So I won't bother at all. Why bother at all? If I can only do this little, then it's probably not enough. And adults across the globe rate their social relationships, particularly with family and close friends, as the most important source of meaning, purpose, and motivation in their lives. A sense of meaning positively contributes to our health because it motivates greater self-regulation in pursuing goals, including our health goals. And evidence also suggests that individuals with higher purpose and perceived emotional and practical support from their social networks are more likely to engage in health-promoting behaviors, such as the use of preventative healthcare services. Like, I know, how sad is it? Like, the lonely people know this. Do you think they're clueless to this information? Of course, we're educated people. We are not ignorant to the fact that family and friends give us meaning in life. Meanwhile, many are struggling with the concept of life is meaningless because they're without people who are motivating, purposeful, and meaningful. And where is this meaning to be found these days? To make money? Instead, pursuing goals. Making money. Make some freaking money. But even then, people who are making money, they still don't feel like they're living their purpose. And then how sad is that? How many people are lost during something that they don't even enjoy? It pays their bills, but then what? It's a society built on working to live, and that our purpose here is to work. Do you know who is most underrepresented in the workforce? Neurodivergent people. Yet they are the most valuable when given a job that highlights their talents and can be given suitable accommodations to thrive in the workplace, which gives them a sense of meaning. The underrepresented community includes many groups: single parents, refugees, returning citizens, blind, deaf, neurodivergent, women, people of color, indigenous people, LGBTQ. Miscommunication, misunderstanding, ambiguity are among the core problems that neurodivergent employees face. These employees are literal thinkers. They may sometimes be unable to read between the lines. They might come off as confrontational, blunt, hypersensitive to certain words or actions. Once the communication is balanced out, neurodivergent employees can prove to be extremely resilient, creative, patient with their work, and have razor sharp focus and attention to detail is their forte. There's this headline that says, autism doesn't hold people back at work, discrimination does. And a quote there says, like many neurodivergent people, I could not find an accurate reflection of myself in the media, in my workplace, or in the world at large. I lacked the language to defend myself from my internalized exclusion. So just take that into consideration as well as what's happening, right? You feel misunderstood by other people in this world. And as much as you try to understand yourself, no one else is ever going to understand you. No one else is going to be able to provide an accurate reflection of who you are in the media. In the UK, the unemployment rate for autistic people is as high as 78%. In the US, that number jumps to 85%. And let's consider, even before we end up in the workplaces, neurodivergent kids who are the most prone to bullying and most sensitive to teachers who don't teach to accommodate neurodivergent brains. There was a lot of information that I came across with respect to neurodivergent people feeling a sense of connection because belonging to a group is something that naturally improves your survival. People have a natural tendency to build and maintain relationships with those who are most like themselves. And it helps to prevent or reduce loneliness and social isolation, but it also contributes to fulfillment and well-being. We know that the number of neurodivergent people is on the rise. It's not that we never existed before, it's just that it's becoming more known. It's like, why all of a sudden are there more people who are coming out who are left-handed? We tried to get rid of all those left-handed people back then, but now we can't deny the left-handers. They're out there. Just like we can't deny the neurodivergent people that we've been trying to assimilate into the neurotypical world for so long. They've had enough. And this is why I think the majority of us who are isolating are on that neurodivergent spectrum. And it makes sense because neurodivergent people may be even a different species than the neurotypical. They have different nervous systems. I even came across an article that says, is rising neurodivergence a natural part of human evolution? They wrote about an evolutional perspective on neurodiversity. Research evidence points to a genetic association between the evolution of human-specific cognition and human-specific brain disorders. Some of our differences have been labeled disabilities because instead of our environment adapting to us and teaching our society how to adapt to these differences, we want to medicate and therapize people into adapting to the norms of being normal. And what this ultimately results in is seclusion and isolation for many people. Not everyone has the same response to the medications or the treatment models. Perhaps those are the ones most impacted by the ableist attitudes and are not just treatment resistant or medication resistant. They're naturally resistant to being told that they must change. And a deeper rooted problem in shame is unveiled. Like, alert, generational trauma over the years has really built up, and we're now dealing with an epidemic. But some people are living in a chronic state of stress, hence PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Is this the epidemic of a stress disorder, the epidemic and pandemic of burnout that we're all experiencing? Even if all the stressors were removed, this chronic state of stress in the body lingers. For so many people who are seeking to regulate their nervous system and recover from burnout, it requires a period of isolation. It requires a period of shutting everyone off around you so that you can heal. It is a healing purpose. But that takes a long time. That takes a long time to do that. And then you keep going out in the world and taking in all this other information, and then you got to start over again in your healing. So some people are going at this from the perspective of healing, wholeness healing, that I'm just going to like lock in. I'm going to lock down with myself and heal myself for once and for all. I'm taking this seriously. Like, I'm a serious healer over here. Like, this healing that I'm doing by isolating myself is not actually going to increase my mortality rate. It's actually, over the long term, going to decrease it. Because by doing this, by isolating myself, I am decreasing the overall stress that I'm bringing onto myself. So they say that being more socially connected can buffer against maladaptive stress responses and the negative health effects of stress. But again, it just seems so cutting to keep reading about being more socially connected. It ignores the issue of why people are having a difficult time doing this, or better yet, even having an interest to. It's like there's this hidden group of lonely people out there, and I'm trying to make this more apparent to people because I'm one of them. And honestly, my health, like I said, has been great. I only have a few connections. I've never had a cold in years. I can't even remember the last time I came down with a cough or a cold. What has been the solution to my loneliness is how I talk to myself. I don't shame myself. I connect with nature. I connect with myself through the practice of mindfulness. I'm also very mindful of the social connections that I do have. And at this age, I'm not interested in forming new ones. If they happen organically, okay, fine. But I've carefully selected the ones that I'm keeping for very few. When community-based participation becomes the norm, I believe we have to create a new normal. And what came out of the COVID-19 was a new normal. But that's not the new normal I'm talking about. The new normal was normalizing social isolation, whereby this new normal will instead redefine what social isolation is and have an understanding of where we all are in the change process. The change process is an interesting one and one that I'm quite well versed in, as it comes from the stages of change model from Francesca and Di Clemente. And if we were to apply this to the problem of overcoming loneliness and the perceived notion of isolation, the first stage is pre-contemplation. What problem? There's no problem. I'm not lonely. My loneliness is not a concern, and there's nothing I need to do to change it. Also, from the lens of society, it's their own fault. They need to stop complaining and just get out there and connect with people. What's the big deal? Then we move into contemplation. Okay, maybe I'm actually lonely. Maybe I have been isolating too much. Maybe this is a problem for me. Maybe I do need to do something about it, but, and the but is a big characteristic of this stage of change, and the but are all the barriers. But I don't know if I can change, but I've been this way for too long and this is how it's going to be. But I've tried before and it always fails, but I can't trust people, but I don't like to be around other people. I'm just doomed. And from the broader perspective, yes, we have this epidemic of loneliness, but it's always been here. But it's never going to get better no matter what we propose. But what if people are still going to be lonely regardless of social connections? Okay, so that's contemplation, thinking about it, but not taking action. Before action can happen is the preparation stage. And this preparation is a crucial time in the change process because it can be very easy to slip back into contemplation or even back into pre-contemplation again, because if the preparation is not carefully considered, it could and will backfire to staying stuck in the problem again. Maybe your plan is to read about it and research it, and you end up staying in the preparation stage for too long. Because ultimately what has to happen is you have to take action on the plan. You could just stare at that treadmill in the corner that you bought. Okay, there it is, but I never go on it. And then you have to see how the action is going. Does the plan need to be revisited? Is it an effective plan that you've put in place? If so, then you move into the maintenance stage of change. You have successfully implemented the change behavior. You're seeing the positive results. Now, at any time, a relapse can occur that impacts your ability to maintain the new behavior. These things are usually stressors in one's life, like getting sick, losing a loved one, maybe you move. There will always be something that's going to come along that have us falling out of our new habit. And for how long that will last, will it be just a lapse and we can quickly get back on track without too many negative or without many negative consequences? Or will it be a full relapse where our previous issues make a comeback? Now, I'm telling you, I wrote how many pages? 69. Okay, I have 69 pages of notes for this last episode because I'm like, oh my gosh, let's just finish this and wrap this thing up. So I can't share everything with you, but one thing that caught my eye was the potential negative side effects of social connection. It says that our fundamental health need for belonging is so strong that we may seek it out in ways that may be unhealthy to ourselves or to our broader community. And this can include participation in gangs, joining extremists or harmful groups. Our natural tendency to associate with those most like us can be manipulated with potentially negative consequences for individual and community well-being. When there are scarce resources, this can also lead to competition among various groups, leading us to an us versus them mentality, right? This brings me back to the lone wolf intro, that wolves who disperse, call themselves the lone wolves, do so because of scarce resources. They have no other choice than to go out on their own and fend for themselves. It's a means of survival. We tend to view our own group as more favorable and deserving than members of other groups. This can result in distrust and rejection of outsiders. But not only that, distrust to those that are already in your family. There are such strong pressures to conform to the group norms that often come with high costs like rejection and ostracization if one doesn't comply. And of course, I have to go back to the neurodivergent group of people who feel pressure to be productive and comply with what everyone else is doing when that's actually too hard and burning themselves out because they're not getting the accommodations they need. And what happens when they do this is they may lash out. They might feel discriminated against and they don't understand why. They feel like they don't fit in, like something's wrong with them, and they turn to substances to cope and to feel better. Neurodivergent people may also be most susceptible to join negatively supported groups because of their naivety, highly trusting nature, thinking these people have their best interests at hand, and they might find themselves committing criminal offenses, joining cults, because they thought it would turn out to be something that someone told them would be safe and they wouldn't get caught. So let's get to the solutions. And it comes down to these 6 pillars. Number 1 is strengthening the social infrastructure. I do agree with making more walkable cities. Even if I'm not connecting with people much, it's even worse if everywhere I go I have to get into the car to get somewhere. Walking helps with the whole sitting is the new smoking issue. It gets you out into local shops. You can be more communal in that way. Number 2, enact pro-connection public policies. What the freaking hell is that? Get someone to be the anti-connection disruptor. It's like, let's get the pro-connection mascot out there to cheer everyone up. There's your cheerleader, and make sure no one is being harmed by their loneliness. Number 3, mobilize the health sector. Yeah, it's like, let's make the healthcare system work harder. That's a waste of time. They say they're going to provide education to those delivering healthcare on the physical and mental health benefits of social connection. Let's just get out there and educate people on the benefits, like they don't know that already. Let them know of the risks that are associated with their social disconnection. Yeah, go back out there and connect with your toxic family members again. That's the best you got. It just sounds like a Band-Aid to me. Do you have a support person at home? Do you have a family that you can talk to? No? Well, here's a number of a community agency that can help you. I know exactly how that works. I've referred clients to community agencies that are burnt out. They lack the infrastructure to provide quality services, or the agencies have limitations on who they're going to work with, and you have to meet certain criteria to access their services. Or you have to get away on a wait list because they're full and over capacity and short-staffed. Number 4 is reform digital environments. Try to outsmart the digital age somehow. Let's see how we can get these kids off their phones. Okay, I'm not going into everything that I wrote about these things because I wrote a lot. If you want my notes, maybe I'll send them to you. Number 5, deepen our knowledge. Number 6, build a culture of connection. They cultivate values of kindness, respect, and service. Have you ever watched politicians in the House of Commons speak to each other? How critical they are of each other? How they belittle the leader? And they have these sarcastic rants in a public forum? Like, start there. Start speaking to each other in the House with kindness and respect. The electoral debates are essentially roasts of the other candidates. Like, is that how you get people to vote for you? By putting the other person down, by criticizing them and shaming them? Behaviors are both learned from and reinforced by the groups we participate in and the communities that we're part of. Yes, and the government needs to model this behavior the most. They say the more we observe other people practicing these values, the more they will be reinforced in us. Yes, be a role model. Media and entertainment shape the beliefs through the depiction of stories. Okay, like stop playing the news on the radio. We don't need updates about how bad the world is. Stop making newspapers with headlines about how many people were killed today, and stop reporting the murder count in your local city. It's up or down. Like, who cares? None of that's helpful, right? None of that's helpful for our society feeling safe and a society that wants to connect. Are we perpetuating a society that lives in fear and that's causing people to isolate and not go out? What do you think? Okay, they tell us all about that. They tell us, and then they say they break it down. Okay, first they talk about what the nation, what territories, what states, what governments can do. Social connection as a priority. So they make it into a political interest. Okay, it's in the political interest to talk about this. Then they look at what healthcare workers and healthcare systems and insurance companies can do. Okay, and this is like part of the educating people. Let them know that this is going on. They want the public health professionals and public health departments to do their part by educating. And then they want researchers and research institutions to do more research, find out more about the roots and the causes of social disconnection. Okay, find out what is going on here. They'll look at what philanthropy can do. They want to fund some programs, of course, for the researching, right? Invest in some programs that will advance social connections. Yes. Be able to treat social isolation, treat loneliness. There's a prescription for that. Here's your treatment. You're experiencing some social isolation, sir. Here's your treatment. Social connection. Go out there, get some social connection. Here's 5 spots you can go and connect. All the best to you, sir. You know? Oh, man. He goes and he probably feels more like an outcast, or he goes and, like I said, oh, they were full. The place was full, or they were closed, or they were short-staffed, or they're only open on Mondays. And Mondays I have to go for whatever my other appointment, so I can't go, you know? Anyway, then they look at what schools and education departments can do. They want to develop a strategic plan for school connectedness and social skills with benchmark tracking. You think schools don't have enough responsibility to teach the kids just the basics already? You know, you have kids coming to school in the morning who didn't have breakfast, who are relying on your breakfast program that's been cut off, and that was their only meal of the day. Never mind wanting them to be connected socially when they already feel not connected socially. Like the school is one of those areas where a whole lot of kids preferred the online schooling because they felt a lot safer and were way more productive. Anyway, okay, then they're talking about what workplaces can do. And they want to train and empower leaders and managers to promote connection in the workplace. Okay, like it doesn't talk about any of like hiring more diverse people, accepting more people into the workplace to allow them to feel a sense of belonging and connection. They talk about what community-based organizations can do, what technology companies can do. They want to ensure safe digital environments that enable positive social connection, especially for minors. What media and entertainment industries can do. You know, create content that models and promotes positive social interactions, healthy relationships, reinforce the core values of connection, kindness, respect. Yeah, make sure you're putting out all that content out there in the media to depict that. It also says to avoid content and products that inadvertently increase disconnection or stigma around social disconnection. Recognize the impact content can have on increasing societal distrust, polarization, and perpetuating harmful stereotypes. I wonder what all that is about. Watch out, kids. Watch out. Social disconnection is going to kill you. Beware. Don't stay in your room all day, kids. Get out there and connect with people. Oh, no. It's just missing the point. It's missing the point. So basic. Okay. And then it talks about what parents and caregivers can do. Wow. Because parents don't already have enough on their plates, right? Yeah. Like, be attentive to how young people spend their time online. Delay the age at which children join social media platforms. Gosh, you think, I don't know. Talk to your children about social connection regularly so that they understand if they're struggling with loneliness or isolation. Destigmatize talking about these feelings. Yeah, we already, as parents, have to talk to our kids about a lot of feelings already as it is, okay? Now, there is quite the list of what individuals can do And of course, it talks about how we need to understand the power of social connection and the consequences of social disconnection by learning how the vital components can impact our relationships, our health, and our well-being. And the vital components are structure, function, and quality. The structures that they talk about are community structures, school, healthcare structures, all of these systems, and how they function. Are they functioning at a good operational level? Are they effective? I would say effectiveness of the structures needs to be a vital component. And the quality. And they want us to be investing time in nurturing our relationships. They want us to be consistent. They want us to be frequent. They want us to have high quality engagement with other people. The consistency piece is probably not going to be something that is reasonable. Consistency is key, yes. But consistency in terms of someone who is neurodivergent and what they are capable of maintaining a consistent engagement and relationship. That is very difficult for a lot of neurodivergent people. You will hear them talking about how, whether or not it's hard or easy for them to make friends, it can be difficult to maintain the friendships because of the consistent attention that they need. It's saying that we need to be taking time every day to reach out to a friend or a family member every day. Okay. And so what does that look like? I could send my sister a quick text to say, hey, Laura, I was thinking about you today. Whether or not she writes back, hey, Frey, love you too. Okay. I live with my daughter, so most days I'm going to see her. What kind of quality interactions I'm having with her varies from day to day. Whereas other people are genuinely not having any contact with people for 24, 48, 72 hours, right? And the contact that they're having with people is maybe a screen, watching a show of somebody who is depicting a character on a television show. So reaching out, yeah, reach out, everybody. Go and reach out to somebody today. And it's true, it feels nice when you've done that and you go to bed at night and you're like, yep, I had a little bit of a contact with whoever that was today. Sent them a little hello message, letting them know I love them. But what if you don't have anyone to reach out to? Who are you sending that message to? And so that's the thing. So sometimes I think people will end up reaching out to somebody that maybe they didn't need to reach out to. Maybe they rekindled something that needed to be left alone. That happens too. It happens to the best of us. We've all been there. We've all done that in our times of loneliness, sending a message to somebody that we really needed to never talk to again. Or getting a message from somebody when you're in a lonely mode. Getting that I miss you text or hey, what's up? And it's sparking like, oh my gosh, someone's thinking about me. But there's also this discernment that we need to have, right? So developing discernment between knowing who those people are that are going to be a quality engagement and the people who are going to be a detrimental engagement. There's also, if you don't have anyone in your life, well, then it says to seek out opportunities to serve and support other people. Volunteer. Talks about practicing gratitude. Indeed. That is a very powerful practice that we can all remind ourselves of what we're grateful for. Like, let me just think of the people who are homeless and who are struggling with addiction and whose family have all cut themselves off from them. What would someone like that be grateful for? And you know what it's going to come down to? It's going to come down to that person that stopped and gave them a friendly smile. It's going to come down to somebody who came along and sat down beside them and said, hey, here's a bottle of water. Here's a little sandwich. I hope you make the most of your day today. Maybe they had been sheltering themselves with cardboard in a storefront with just a piece of tarp and cardboard, and someone came along and gave them a tent And they got an opportunity to go somewhere that had a little bit more space and that wasn't on the side of the road with all the traffic. These are the things that they're going to be grateful for. And if someone is watching this who's struggling with that sort of situation right now, all those things that you can be grateful for, the dry socks on your feet, the tarp that somebody gave you, the bottle of water, the hot coffee, a sandwich, that all came from someone else. Someone else made that happen for you. Don't underestimate the power of you giving to the less fortunate who are looking for something to be grateful for. And if you've done that for someone today, oh, let that fill your heart because it filled theirs. We've got so-and-so that's been volunteering for 20 years. They've been here every day. They're a constant in people's lives. And maybe that person needs a little break from volunteering every day for the last 20 years, who has been a constant in other people's lives. And as much as they're getting something out of it, maybe it's time for somebody to give to them in a different way. Maybe there's something that they've been hiding underneath it all. What is it in them that they need to become very vulnerable about? That they go home after all this time that they've spent giving to others, and they come home to an empty home where they feel empty, despite all the giving that they've been doing. Or that person who's been volunteering for 20 years every day, giving themselves to other people, they go home to an empty house, but they don't feel empty at all. I bet you they have a lot of pets at home and plants that they take care of. They probably have made friends with other volunteers or other people that they've come across. And so they feel very fulfilled in that sense. Their giving is not to fill a void of a lack that's in themselves. Their giving comes from a place of already a great sense of purpose and fulfillment. And maybe giving over time does fill you with purpose and fulfillment. Make sure that it does. Because if it doesn't, then it might mean that you're giving for the wrong reason. You're giving too much away instead of allowing things to be received at the same time. There might be a very big discomfort to become vulnerable with somebody else because you're afraid that if you become vulnerable with them, they might offer you some comfort. And there might be something very discomforting with receiving comfort, with receiving help. And that's a barrier that you're going to have to remove for yourself. If you are so uncomfortable to be vulnerable because you don't want to receive comfort or be helped in your vulnerability, that is definitely something that's holding you back. And that is definitely something that's rooted in your own trauma growing up that taught you that it's uncomfortable to be comforted, that it's embarrassing to be comforted, that it's shameful to be needing help, or the fact that you need help is something to be ashamed of. This is a big struggle that a lot of people have, to admit that they need help. That's the number one thing. Because otherwise people would rather suffer in pride than experience shame by asking for help. There's a lot of people out there that are doing that right now. That's the most saddest thing to me. So as much as I can say that socially connecting with other people, it might be a little bit unreasonable in the way that they are suggesting. There needs to be this door that opens that allows people to feel okay to step through it, to step through that door in whatever capacity they're capable of. And for the people on the other side of that door to recognize that this is a big deal, that this person has come through here. But let's not make a big deal of it, because that might make them a little uncomfortable. Let's just be chill about it, chill that they're here. So the US Surgeon General's report on loneliness and isolation, they also have a chapter on their national strategy, what they're going to do. The first thing that they connect that leads to a practice that leads to feelings of disconnection is social media. Like someone who is very connected to social media and being an entrepreneur and being someone who does a lot of their work alone and spends a lot of time alone. What is so interesting is that when I disconnect from social media, I feel more connected. I feel more connected to what's actually happening around me. Because when you're on a phone, it seems like you're connecting with people from all over the world, but that in itself is the most disconnecting thing ever. Because it's like they're just out there. If it wasn't for this phone, it didn't exist. Would all those people still exist? Yeah. Like unless I actually see you in the flesh, are you real? So no wonder. I get it. Social media is one of those things. And I hear about people saying getting rid of social media and how it's so much better for their mental health. And it's very true. Meanwhile, I think that it can be used to foster some connections as well. Or their user number 985627598. Thanks, user number, for commenting. That was really meant a lot to me today. So a lot of us are struggling right now with phone addiction, like any other addiction that stimulates us to trick us, to think that we are getting some sort of connection, but we're not really, we're disconnecting. The other harmful practice that leads to feelings of disconnection is time spent in unhealthy relationships and disproportionate time in front of screens instead of people. Hey, before the lockdown, before we started to work from home, there was already a disproportionate time in front of screens than human. We all work on a computer. Tell me a profession, there are some, yes, that don't spend the majority of their time on the computer, looking at a screen, entering data, typing out reports, writing content, whatever it is, even creating on the computer, on the screen. But this is our age. This is our digital age that we've entered. And when you talk about work-life balance, it's no longer a work-life balance that we need to be concerned about. It's more of a virtual versus in-person balance. You know, how have you balanced that for yourself today? You know, taking yourself away from the screen. And sometimes we might give ourselves those, I'm getting away from putting my phone away for a week. You know, the same as sitting. If we sit too long. And well, when we're sitting, what do you think we're doing? We're looking at a screen. Well, then they invented a standing desk for us. Okay, there you go. You can still look at the screen, but you don't have to be sitting. Now you can be standing. Okay. And then we invented these walking pads and treadmill desks. So now you can be walking while you're looking at the screen. Like the screen's still there. How can we still look at the screen, but reduce the health impacts? No, get away from the screen. Go outside for a walk. Okay, remove the screen while you're walking. Okay, I know we're all trying our best. We're trying to do the best we can do. The other part of the national strategy is seeking help, as I noted, which is very hard for people to do. And then when you do seek out help, well, are you being fully honest about everything? Being open with your healthcare provider about your changes in your life so that they can understand the potential health impacts. But even then, our healthcare system is struggling as well. They might not be able to provide the best service for us, despite how open and honest we are about what's happening. They're still very limited in what they can do. And we become a little disenfranchised with the systems and the services to the point where we say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother. They can't even do anything for me. They piss me off even more. Other people might be having very positive experiences with this. They finally open up, they finally talk about what's going on, and they finally get the help. They finally are like, why did I wait this long? Oh my gosh, I could have had this help years ago if I had just opened up. Okay, so there's also that. Sometimes we're just getting by. Sometimes the services are awesome. Sometimes the services are lacking. And you know why? Because they're all run by humans. They're all run by us. Okay, so you can't fault things that are happening in the systems. You can't fault things so much that are happening in politics or with our financial services, because who runs it all? Humans are. Humans are subject to their own faults and follies and traumas and deficiencies, just like anyone else is, right? We can't expect any service to be perfect. We can't expect any system to be perfect, although that's what we all want. We all want these perfect systems to exist. But what we fail to realize is that it's dependent on having a perfect human to make it so. And that's not possible. You know, things are going to fall apart. Things are going to crumble. We are always going to have to start over. And this is a period of starting over. You know, we've all been trying our best. We've all burnt ourselves out. No, the system was never perfect and was never supposed to be, although we had the expectations that it better be. And so now I think it's about taking a step back and being realistic about what we're capable of, what we actually need, what consistency actually looks like, what community connection actually looks like, what connection for ourselves actually looks like. The national strategy also wants people to be making time for civic engagement. They want to allow people to engage in political discourse and gatherings, town halls, school board meetings, local government hearings. What usually ends up in all of that is a lot of dissing of one another, a lot of criticism, a lot of complaining, a lot of shaming. And let's face it, like this is not the society that I want to be living in. This is not the type of humanity that I want to be associated with. We're very much lacking in the ability to have constructive debates, constructive arguments, constructive conflicts, where people are respectful at the same time. And if we expect this system to ever be perfect, you're going to be disappointed, because they're never going to be. So this is a shift in consciousness, really is what needs to happen here. Humans, for whatever reason, have always been in conflict with one another. Like, what other species on Earth pride themselves on conflict? I don't know why we need to do that. They've listed a whole lot of things that we have to do, all these strategies. You know what it all comes down to? Is one word: mindfulness. Being mindful. If you are a mindful creature, none of this is going to be taking place. None of this is going to be happening. We're not going to have any of these problems. The problem is a lack of mindfulness. There's a lack of mindful awareness. There's a lack of awareness in the present moment without judgment. No, how many people are actually living in the present moment? Everyone's rushing around, thinking about the future or ruminating about the past. And that's stress. That's anxiety. That leads you to shut down and do nothing and close yourself off to the world. Mindfulness needs to be taught in schools so that when you are on your phone, you have mindful awareness of, oh man, I'm spending too much time on this phone. It's time to put it down and go out for a walk. It's time to call my friend. That's what mindfulness does. Mindfulness also allows us to connect inwardly, which not a lot of people are doing. They're avoiding themselves. So we need to normalize mindfulness as a way to connect with others and with ourselves. When you are mindful of other people, you can treat them with respect. When you are mindful of your environment and what you have and what you don't have, that allows you to practice gratitude. When you are mindful about the people and the relationships that you have in life, it allows you to choose more quality relationships. When you are mindful of the connection with people that you've had in the last week, it puts you into a state of saying, oh, I need to send so-and-so a message right now. I need to connect with them. The other aspect of mindfulness, awareness, is of our communities. Yes, we all live in different communities. And how can we be more mindful of the way that we live in our communities? Is it very mindful to build a 20-story building where everyone is just piled in there and goes down into a parking lot to get into their car and drive around to the grocery store and then go back into their underground parking lot and take an elevator up to their thing? It's like living in an underground world. Like, do people even have an opportunity to connect with one another? So mindfulness becomes the number one thing. And as I'm saying the word mindfulness, how many of you are practicing mindfulness on a daily basis? How many of you are reminding yourself to bring yourself back to the present moment? How many of you are catching yourself in your self-defeating thoughts and bringing it back into your own self-awareness without judgment? And where there is no judgment, there's acceptance. Acceptance of yourself, acceptance of where you are today, acceptance of what happened yesterday, acceptance of what might happen tomorrow is completely unknown, and that's okay. But where am I right now? What am I doing today? What am I able to do today? What am I grateful for today? Who can I connect with today? And if no one else but myself, I can connect with myself today. And over the course of time, that practice, you cultivate an inner sense of well-being. And that inner sense of well-being allows you to expand your consciousness further to connect with other people in a meaningful way and have healthier relationships. Mindfulness allows you to understand what the boundary is between yourself and somebody else. It allows you to recognize what you're capable of and maybe what you're still working on. Digging into all this information has been very eye-opening for myself in my own personal times of isolation and loneliness. It's allowed me to be very self-reflective in my own practices and my own self. And it's also brought me to realizing how important the practice of mindfulness really is, and how all of our greater humanity comes back to that one thing. Regardless of religion, financial, class, job, status, race, sexual orientation, all of that, what we all have the capability of practicing is mindfulness. We can all do it, but you just got to start. Mindfulness is something I'm going to be talking deeper on in the Lone Wolf Gathering. So once again, I invite you to join me. It's filling up fast, so you better get your spot soon, and I hope to see you there.